So I decided to do another video. Um, this one has to do, I've had a little theme going on God and double standards. God clearly had double standards for Jews versus the rest of the world. And there's actually, I got several pages here, but I'm not going to read it all. I'm just going to kind of skim through it. But it's on concubines, wives, and daughters. And it's on the treatment of women. And if you're a Christian, a lot of times what people do is they skip over the hard parts and the parts of the Bible they just really don't want to talk about. And they make excuses like, well, that was the Old Testament, or that was cultural, or they give all these excuses to basically sweep under the rug all of what we consider today to be horrific things. And if you're going to be a Christian and stay a Christian, you have to accept these things and deal with them. You can't just pretend like, that God changed his mind and everything he thought that was okay back then is no longer okay now. That doesn't work. God gave the law, and it says that it was perfect. It says that it was pure. It says that it was verbally inspired. It says that in the New Testament that the law was for the instruction in righteousness. In the New Testament, it says that the law defines sin. In other words, sin is the transgression of the law. And God, through Moses, said that the law was supposed to be the pinnacle of all laws, and how righteous and wise the other nations would look at Israel and think, man, you guys really got it together. So you got to understand what a big deal it is when you read the Old Testament and you see things that God either regulated, allowed, condoned, whatever you want to call it, but by him making laws regulating something, that is saying that that's okay. And to say, well, Moses tolerated it, no, it says very clearly that these were the commandments of God. So I'm picking out a few different stories here, and the value of men versus women. And now, when I'm reading these things, think about how you would feel today if somebody did this to you, or your daughter, or your mistress, or whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to go back to Judges, and I'm going to start there. And in Judges 19, it says, "It came to pass in those days that there was no king in Israel, and there was a certain Levite." Now think about this, a Levite. He's supposed to be the guy that takes care of the things of God. And it says he sojourned in the side of Mount Ephraim, and he took him a concubine out of Bethlehem, Judah. And his concubine played the whore against him, and went away from him unto her father's house to Bethlehem, Judah. So her husband arose, went after her, spoke kindly unto her, tried to get her back. And so he goes to her father's house, and the bottom line is her father tried convincing him to stay there, because if you could get a Levite to live with you, be with you, worship for you, whatever, that was a big deal. So I'm going to skip over a bunch of that. So it was like the last straw, and the Levite's like, hey man, I got to get out of here. So he takes his concubine, and it says the man would not tarry that night, but he rose and he departed and came over against Jebus, which is Jerusalem. And there were 2 asses saddled, and his concubine also was with him. And so basically, he turns into the city, he lodges in it, and his master says, we will not turn it. Basically, his servant was like, hey man, let's stay here. And he's like, no, we don't want to stay here. And so he says, come, I pray thee, and let us turn into the city of the Jebusites and lodge in it. And his master said unto him, we will not turn aside into a city of a stranger. So his big deal was he didn't want to stay with strangers. And that is not of the children of Israel. And we will pass over to Gibeah. So his servant says, let us go into one of these places and just lodge there. So they passed on and went on their way, and they didn't. And it says the sun went down upon them when they were by Gibeah, which belongeth to Benjamin. So now they're in territory that are familiar to them, and so they're in a town of the Benjamites, and they turned aside to go and lodge. And when he went in, he sat down in the streets of the city, and nobody took him in. He didn't want to stay with a stranger, but in a strange city, but the people that he was like, hey man, let's stay with people we know, nobody wanted to be nice to him. So old man comes, takes him in, and I'm skipping over a lot of stuff because I just want to make a point. So it says, now as they were making their hearts merry, so somebody finally took them in. And they're in a place that they're familiar with, not strangers. It says, while they were making their hearts merry, behold, the men of the city, certain sons of Belial, beset the house round about, and beat at the door, and spake to the master of the house, and the old man, saying, bring forth the man that came into thine house, that we may know him. Now in the King James, when it says that we may know somebody, it means they want to have sex. Alright, so these guys want to sodomize the guy that came in. Now again, they could have stayed in a stranger's city, but no, they had to stay in, a city of the Benjamites. And so the master of the house, he goes out and says, don't do this thing. Don't do it. It's wicked. Okay, now think about the phraseology here. He says, I pray you do not so wickedly. Seeing this man has come into my house, do not this folly. So them wanting to sodomize his guest is wicked. Okay? So here's his alternative. Don't do this wicked thing. Behold, here is my daughter, a maiden, and his concubine. Them will I bring out now, and humble ye them, and do with them what seemeth good unto you. But to this man do not so vile a thing. That speaks volumes. You could say, well, that's just one man. This is a Levite. A Levite. This is a man of God. And this is not a strange city. This is a city of the Benjamites, all right? So you have the citizenship of God's holy people trying to sodomize a stranger, a Levite. And his host is willing to give up his daughter. And the guy is willing to give up his concubine to cover his butt. There's no pun intended, but it fits. Okay? So you think about this. This is the mindset they had. It is okay to give your daughter or your concubine, which was basically an unofficial wife, it is okay to give them over to be abused, sexually abused, to protect yourself or to protect somebody, another male. You think about that. You can say, oh, no. That's what it says. This isn't a one-time incident. So that's exactly what they do. They give them over, and all they want is the concubine for whatever reason. And so they take the concubine, and they knew her and abused her all night until the morning. And this is the other thing I want to point out. So her lord rises up in the morning, opens the door of the house, goes outside, and the woman's fallen down at the doorstep, and her hands are upon the threshold. So now this is basically a quote of what the guy says, and he says unto her, up, let us be going. Like, come on, let's go. She just got abused all night long by these men of the city, and he's indifferent to it. She is laying on the front steps of this guy's house, and it says that he just says, come on, let's go. Some of you are thinking, what an asshole. Exactly. And this is a righteous man. This is a Levite. And the man that was protecting his guest offered his daughter up. How many of you that are listening to this right now would offer your daughter up to protect a male guest? It's a vile, wicked thing to try and sodomize a man, but it's okay to give your daughter or your concubine over to those same people. That's not vile or wicked? Apparently not. So a few things to take away from this are: the people of God treat you worse than strangers. It was acceptable to them for a woman to be mistreated to protect a man. And the indifference of the Levite towards his concubine in the morning. Hey, get up, let's go. That's what I get from it. Lot. Remember Lot? Just Lot? Okay? Remember Abraham pleading with God, hey, if there's 50 righteous people, would you not destroy the city? Would you do it for 30, 20? How about just 10? Well, they only found apparently just Lot. So this is the righteous dude. This is just Lot. And so here's his story. If I'm sure you've heard it before, but let's go over it again. And it says there came two angels of Sodom, and Lot sees them, says, hey, my lords, turn in, come in, hang out with me, I'll wash your feet. You rise up in the morning and be on your way. Sounds reasonable. And it says, before they lay down, the men of the city, even the men of Sodom, compassed the house round about, both old and young, and all the people from every quarter. So there's a lot of people. And it says they called unto Lot, and they said unto him, where are the men which came into thee this night? Bring them out to us that we may know them. So here again they're saying, hey, we want to have sex with them. And he again, now this is Lot, this is a different person, and Lot's like, hey man, don't do this wicked thing. And he says, the very next verse, he says, hey, behold, I have 2 daughters. 2 daughters. Don't do this nasty thing to this guy. That's bad, that's wicked. But I have 2 daughters here. They haven't even known a man yet. They're virgins. I pray you, I will bring them out to you, and you do to them whatever's good in your eyes. Have at it. They're my daughters. Hey, do whatever you want to them. Whatever you think's good. These are my daughters. Hey, man, go ahead and do that. There's 2 of them. Knock yourself out. But to this guy, don't do this wicked thing. Remember, this is the only righteous man in the whole city, and this is how he thinks. Yeah. And so obviously, if you know the story, you know, the angels pull him back in and like, and they strike him blind and stuff like that. So the angels warn him, say, hey, you know, anybody that you know, sons, son-in-laws, whatever. So it says, and Lot went out and spake unto his sons-in-law, which married his daughters, and said, get up out of this place, the Lord's going to destroy it. And he seemed as one that mocked to his sons-in-law. So either Lot's full of shit and he lied and they're not virgins, or they were betrothed but they had not consummated the marriage yet. That's also a possibility, because I've heard atheists say, oh yeah, Lot lied. He may have, but there is another answer to that, and that is that they may have been betrothed and yet not taken. So I'm not saying that's the case. It doesn't specifically say, but it's not unreasonable to believe that. So there you have the whole story a lot condensed. And so a few things to consider here are: Lot cared for the well-being of strangers over his own daughters. He put a man's protection. He chose to protect to strangers. He chose to protect strangers instead of protecting his family, his 2 daughters. That's pretty pathetic. And it was considered a wicked thing for these men to sodomize his guest, but it was not considered a wicked thing for them to perhaps sodomize or rape these daughters. And you know, it's if these men were wanting to sodomize other men, it's not unreasonable to believe that they were not interested in sodomizing his daughters as well. And so there's a distinction where it's okay to sodomize women, but it's not okay to sodomize men. And you can say, yeah, but one was against his will. You think the daughters were volunteering to get butt rammed? You need to think about this. And then the third example I would like to give about treatment of women, and this was Abraham. Okay, you know who Abraham is, and Sarah. You've heard about Sarah and Abraham and Sarah. So you can say, well, Lot was influenced by Sodom and Gomorrah. Fair enough, I'll give you that. Okay, but what you're really going to have a problem with is Abraham chose to stay out in the plains. He didn't go into the city. So, and he talked directly with God. So we're going to figure out what Abraham thought about treating women. Now keep in mind, before Abraham departed and went on his journey, God told him to leave his kindred and all that, Abraham was 75 years old, which means his wife was about 75 years old, and she was way past menopause. How attractive could she be? You could say, oh, people lived longer back then. She lived, I think, 127. But I don't know too many 75-year-old women that anybody's going to be in line to either rape or take for a wife. I don't mean any disrespect, but it's just reality. So in Genesis 12 it says, and it came to pass, when he was come near to enter Egypt, he said unto Sarai his wife. Now remember, they're 75 years plus here. He said unto Sarai his wife, behold, I know that thou art a fair woman to look upon. Therefore it shall come to pass, when the Egyptians shall see thee, say to them that this is his wife, or I'm sorry, and they shall say, this is his wife, and they will kill me, but they will save thee alive. So I don't know if you really understand what he was saying here is that Abraham, he says, I pray thee, thou art my sister, that it may be well with me for thy sake, and my soul shall live because of thee. So why do you think they would want to kill Abraham for Sarah? Keep in mind, these are supposed to be wicked, nasty, evil people, these strangers, these foreign nations that have no morals and no righteous codes or anything. They would kill him to take his wife. So why do you think they'd want to do that? Because they want to have sex with her. So what he's saying is, I want you to lie, say that you're my sister, you're not married to me, so that by doing this you'll save my ass. Well, do you think they would have been satisfied with just, oh, she's your sister, okay? No. You look in both instances, the ruler immediately took her into his harem or whatever and was going to have sex with her. So, number one, Sarah didn't say, are you nuts? I'm not sleeping with anybody else. But that's what Abraham asked her to do. And you can say, oh, it doesn't say that. It does. It does. And Sarah doesn't protest. And that's what Abraham does. He is asking his wife to have sex with other men to cover his ass. And I know you're saying, no, it doesn't. It does. Just like the Levite, which gave his concubine, which is a sex, it's like an unofficial wife. And just like Lot offered his two daughters. In all three of these cases, men of God didn't think anything of offering a woman to cover their rear end. So we'll read on here. And so they're passing, oops, I gotta get down here. Must have bumped my screen. So they go into Egypt. He asked her to say, hey, just say that you're my sister. The Egyptians, they beheld this 75 plus year old lady and says, ooh, she's good looking. And so Abraham goes into Egypt. The the princes also, Pharaoh saw her and commended her before Pharaoh. The woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. And he entreated Abraham well for her sake. And he had sheep and oxen and asses and men servants and maid servants, she asses and camels. Do you think this happened overnight? No, this took a while. And behold, the Lord plagued Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. So now you got Abraham that's lying. He is being deceitful. And the Pharaoh, which is not being deceitful, and he was being respectful, and giving Abraham a bunch of stuff because of his sister. And God plagues Pharaoh. What a great God. And Pharaoh calls Abraham. He's like, what did you do to me? You told me she's not your wife. Said she's my sister. And Pharaoh commanded his men, say, hey man, leave him alone. So that's pretty pathetic. So you have men of God being lying, deceitful people, and then the people that are these foreign nations that are supposed to be wicked, rotten, nasty people, they're the ones being honorable. God's people are treating people like shit and lying, and the strangers, these other nations, are the ones that get punished. Figure that one out. So here's another time. This just didn't happen just once. So here's another time this happens. Now think about this. It's now they are both at least 99 years old. Okay? So they're almost 100 years old. And Abraham again. Abraham and Sarah were old. It says they're well stricken in age, and it ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of woman. She's hit menopause. She's done. She's dried up. It is a dry cave down there, okay? She's done. And therefore, and I'm quoting from Genesis 18 to kind of to bring a point up here. And it says, therefore Sarah laughed within herself, saying, I am waxed old. Shall I have pleasure, my Lord being old also? She's responding to God saying she was going to have a child. So I'm just establishing the fact that she's menopause. She's way past menopause. Way past menopause. And it says that she's old, and she's like, shall I have pleasure? In other words, sex ain't even pleasurable for her anymore. She's an old lady, 99 years old. Okay, she's old. And Abraham, it says Abraham's he's an old fart too. Like, they didn't have Viagra back in those days or whatever. And so Abraham, he journeys thence towards the south country and dwells in Kadesh and Shur and sojourned in Gerar. I don't know how you pronounce it. And Abraham again says to his wife, she is my sister. And Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. But God came to Abimelech in a dream and said, behold, thou art but a dead man. For the woman thou hast taken, she is a man's wife. And Abimelech, it says he had not came near her. And the Lord, he says, Lord, will you slay a righteous nation? So God punished them basically. And God said that, hey, I'll have Abraham pray for you. And it came to pass when God caused me to wander, Abraham's talking, God's caused me to wander from my father's house, that I said unto her, that this thy kindness which thou shalt show unto me, every place, this is Abraham talking, every place whither we shall come, say of me, he is my brother. So these are the only two recorded places. And this isn't like an exhaustive historical record. So he talked to his wife and said, hey, every place we go, lie to them and tell them that you are my sister. So he asked her basically, hey, have sex with people here. You know, if they take you or whatever, cover my ass so I don't get hurt. Would you please do that for me? She's like, yeah, okay. And so anyways, going back to Abimelech, God says, hey, you're but a dead man. And Abimelech's like, what did I do? So what happened here is it says, "For the Lord had fast closed up all the wombs of the house of Abimelech because of Sarah, Abraham's wife." So again, this isn't something that just happened in a night. This took time. I mean, how would they know that the wombs are all closed up? It would have to at least be a month, and nobody was getting pregnant at least. So there's some time that's going on here. And so again, with Abraham here, Abraham is a lying, deceiving person. And all he cares about is protecting his own ass. He wants to cover his butt so he don't get hurt, and he's willing to give up his wife to do it. Now don't tell me, no, no, he was. Twice it's recorded here that a ruler took his wife and was going to marry her. That is giving your wife up to have sex with another man to cover your own ass. That is a fact, and that is a truth. And the only way you can ignore that or deny it is to literally cover your eyes and close your ears and go, la, 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 la. So a few things to take away from this is a man of God was a lying, deceiving person willing to give up his wife to cover his own ass. And an unrighteous nation, these wicked, nasty strangers, were more righteous than Abraham, and they get punished because Abraham is a liar and a deceiver. And Abraham, a lying, deceiving person, willing to give up his wife to cover his own ass, has to pray for these wicked, nasty people that are acting more righteous than him so that God would forgive them. It's messed up. So a few things to take from this story. Abraham didn't think twice about offering his wife/sister over to protect himself from harm, not just once, but at least twice. Sarah didn't think there was anything wrong with this. There's no record of her protesting. God punishes a king and his kingdom for innocently taking an old woman to be his wife, but blesses Abraham for his deception. A woman that is at least 75 years the first time and 99 years the second time is considered fair to look upon. Sarah was old and well stricken in age, and it ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of woman. And her again saying, I am waxed old, shall I have pleasure? And you got two kings trying to take her because she's fair to look upon? I'm sorry, I just don't buy that. And the last thing, which is kind of a ha-ha joke, is kings have granny addictions. They had granny addictions back then. Or no.